Well, to discuss now, I'm joined by Owen and Cornwall from Nkunzi Investments, as we Mpelele Langalanga from the South African Institute of International Affairs. Good evening to you. Good afternoon to you, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
It's been such a shocking day that my time is all mixed up. Owen, starting with you, can you believe that we're even having this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very surprised. Yesterday, I put bets up with people in my network, and I said, guys, this is just a joke. I mean, there's going to be a big 8% margin of let's stay in here. And how wrong I was. You know, just a mere 3 to 4% gap between the guys that want to stay and the guys that want to leave. And the decision has been made to leave. So
it's not only you that's wrong. The markets were so confident. The bookies as well. Does this change things in terms of economic predictions, looking at what investors expect? Because it means anything is possible.
Yeah, it actually goes to stamp on the fact that, you know, the predictions we always make in the markets, you know, no one ever goes back to check, hey, with what's the track record? Were they right or were they wrong? Especially in consensus, or are they when you do a census and things like that, when you do a survey, no one ever gets to check if the track record says the people that do the guesswork are right. But I think it's a game changer. It isolates Britain in a big way. People are already thinking that's going to be hard for British companies to get work in the European Union. And they're thinking some people are going to leave London as a production center, whether it's for products or for services. There's already talk of people at UBS considering leaving London because of the decision that has been made by the British. And a few other big corporates that are based in London are thinking about doing the same thing. And it's a new change, in my view, in terms of the way our contracts are negotiated with companies that are based in the UK. I think should Britain struggle going forward economically, she's going to be very, very isolated. Bailouts are not going to come from the big unions, or rather the big organizations like the Eurozone and the European unions, etc., because it's always going to be seen as those guys, you know.
They
guys
chose to go alone.
Exactly.
As we Mpelele, you look at the trade side of things. How serious is this, and how surprising for you?
Yeah, I must say we were quite surprised that the vote went the way it went. But maybe it was not an issue to put to a referendum, considering the complexity of the issue, especially at trade and economic side. But
just unpack that. Are you saying, because I've heard this before, a yes/no vote wasn't the right thing, perhaps, according to some views, for something that is so complicated for people to understand?
Yeah, I think it was.
And nuanced as well.
Yeah, of course. I think it wasn't a good thing to put to a referendum. I mean, when the British people voted David Cameron, they gave him a mandate to make a decision on some of these complex issues. But for him then to put this back to them is sort of counterintuitive and when you look at how democracy works. But I think going forward for the UK, what it has to do is to renegotiate the trade agreements and its relationship with the EU. You'll know that Switzerland is not part of the EU, Liechtenstein is not part of the EU, Luxembourg, they're part of what is called the European Free Trade Association. So I think the UK has to sort of renegotiate its relationship with the EU in that sense for it to be able to access the EU market.
Right now, we, as part of SACU, have signed an agreement with the EU that many applauded because it gives us lower tariffs on a whole range of goods. With the UK deciding for a Brexit, is that still in place? Do we have to wait a little while, or are those tariffs, those lower tariffs going into the UK already under threat?
Yeah, they're already under threat. I think the UK is no longer part of the SADC EPA, by it's not being no longer be part of the EU.
Is that from today or from months ahead, is what I'm saying? Or do we not even know?
You remember this agreement had not been signed by the parliaments, by the two parliaments. But what happens is that the UK has to notify the European Council, which is the European Parliament, that it will no longer be part of the European Union. So there has to be that formal notification. For now, the UK is still part of the European Union until it notifies the UK, the European Council, that is no longer part of the. Then after that notification, automatically it leaves the market. Then if it doesn't do that, it gets out of the European Union after 2 years. So for now, on the ground at the border, still this thing, the issues remain the same.
All right, but that agreement, the UK will be left out of because it hasn't even been signed.
Yes.
We'll talk about the implications of that. But first, Owen, what are the immediate implications? We've seen the rand plunge. What does this mean for inflation? What does it mean for interest rates in South Africa?
No, look, I think as far as the rand is concerned, we've been taken aback a little bit because remember, last week we were trading at 16 bucks and higher than that, and the currency managed to go back to about 1540 odd, and I think it came and it traded higher than that. Actually, I think it was below 15 bucks. So the damage is not so bad if you look at it over a month's period, in my view. But if it had been trading above 16, then we'll be trading above 17. So in terms of the dollar rand rate, I think we're okay there.
Could we even say it could have been much worse?
It could have been much worse,
Because after so-called Nene Gate, we went to 17 at one stage. So
it could have been worse. But for
relatively not
today's
bad.
reaction, the pound, we are firmer against the pound because the pound is getting decimated aggressively. The rand is trading at 20.55 odd to the British pound, which is good for the guys that buy stuff from Britain to produce other goods and stuff like that, or services. When we're paying for services that we get from the UK, it's better for us. But on the inflation side as well, let's talk about the price of oil. It has come down 5%. It's trading at 46 to 47 odd bucks, which is good on our inflation side. So we seem somehow to always be lucky when all these dramatic news items happen. You know, with the oil price falling, it's great for inflation. If it had been a double whammy of the price of oil going up and the rand weakening, then most certainly at the next MPC meeting we could have had an interest rate increase.
The big fear this year is a possible recession. Does this make that more likely?
Look, it's a bit difficult to say, honestly, but I think we will see a negative growth probably for the next quarter or so. But I think with global uncertainty being elevated, now most people are going to wait for their decision-making until November to see what happens in the USA in terms of the Trump and the Hillary Clinton decision that has to be made there. And I believe that there's going to be uncertainty for the rest of the year. Growth is not going to come through anytime soon, in my view.
So Mpelele, does this make a Trump presidency more likely? It does seem like there's a world faction, a conservative faction. Could you link what's going on in the UK to America, to a lot of other European countries as well?
Yeah, I think it can be linked to the US election, and the Trump effect can be linked to the UK and the whole immigration issue, because I'm sure the people who voted to get out of the UK, the European Union, they did that based mostly on the immigration policy. They feel like the EU is giving access to the UK to migrants from Syria and North Africa. And because Trump on the other side also is talking a lot about migration, so this sort of builds a critical mass of constituencies all over the globe who are anti-immigration. And I'm sure there is a possibility of actually having a Trump presidency. It will be interesting actually to hear how Trump himself will react to the Brexit.
That would be interesting indeed.
Yeah.
Finally, and I'll give you the last word, but for you first, Azwi Mpelele, a lot of people have said maybe once this market craziness has died down, it's not a bad thing for South Africa, because the UK will be looking for closer partnerships with other parts of the world, especially if trade with the EU is threatened. Are there any sectors, maybe agriculture, those quotas could change that may have an opportunity to cheer at this, actually?
I'm a bit skeptical about that, because I think the EU remains the biggest partner for the UK, and when sanity prevails after this, when this has died down, they will have to forge stronger ties with EU. Then what will happen in South Africa will depend on whether they will come to South Africa through the EFTA that I mentioned, which is Switzerland and Liechtenstein and Luxembourg and Norway, or whether they will have a bilateral with South Africa. If they decide to do a bilateral with South Africa, then it means that then we'll benefit more from that.
Final word from you, very quickly. Is this craziness going to continue?
Look, I just hope that Britain will survive in terms of the economic side of things, because if they don't, they will not have anywhere else to go and seek solace in. And just my Uber driver said, you know what, oh, and you guys are using these big words. I say the British are being xenophobic.
It does seem like a vote on immigration, like you say. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes.
Owen Nkomo and Azwin Pelele Langa Langa from Shire.